This video series is Integrated Financial Planning, Time Value of Money. So in this series, we're going to have 5 videos, and we're going to be looking at number 1, one-child education planning, number 2, retirement planning, and highlighting the importance of the discount rate. The third video will be two-child education planning. The fourth video is one-child care planning. And finally, this video series will be finishing with two-child care planning. Now, a lot of this is stemming out of the video for the FP candidate case, protecting the family, because we run, except for the retirement planning, we run through the time value money calculations for the child education and the child care. Okay, so this is just a follow-up, doing some more calculations, some more practice. Okay, so again, the topic for this video is one-child education planning, and it's a follow-up for the FP Canada case, protecting the family, where they did some child education calculations, but I didn't quite agree with the discount rates, so I wanted to put this video, it's a follow-up to that, or it can stand alone, just run through an example of one-child education planning as we teach it at the college, and the correct use of the appropriate discount rates. So as I said, we're looking at education planning in this video, but the theme throughout this series of videos is all the time value money calculations. You're going to see some of the similarities and just give you more practice on it. So the 3 steps for the calculations for both retirement planning and education planning are the same to determine a lump sum required today. So we use education planning in insurance planning when we want to know a lump sum amount times 0, that's today, to fund future education. So the scenario would be parent dies, there's no more income, wanted to make sure that if that event happened, there would be enough money available to fund the child's university education sometime in the future. So what amount would I need today to cover those costs? Okay, so that's the application, but we need to know how to do the calculations. And we could also use education planning and basic family financial planning, where you say, yeah, I've got these kids, we know university is very expensive, so how much do we need to start saving yearly or monthly into an education fund, so we know that we've got money lump sum available at the time when my child will reach university age. So there's different types of applications, but the calculations are kind of the same. And that's really the focus we'll be working through in both Excel and with the financial calculator. Okay, the 3 steps for the calculations for retirement planning and education planning are basically the same. So we're just going to run through the 3 steps here quickly, and then we'll jump into step number 1. So step number 1, we're going to inflate the current cash flow amount or expense for the number of years until required. So that's the start of retirement or university in the future, to determine the first year's cash flow need. So in this first step, the discount rate, IY, we're going to use the rate of inflation. Okay, that's the important thing to see. And you can see, so what we're doing is that, in the example that we're going to look at, the cost of education today is $12,000. Okay, that's in today's dollars. And you have a child, the child is 6 years old, and they're going to go to school when they're 18 years old. So you can see 18 years old minus 6 years old, n is going to equal 12. My present value is going to be 12,000. I'm going to have no payment, and I'm going to solve for the future value, n equals 12. The future value, how much is that education worth here in the future? Because at that time, step number 2, I'm going to calculate then how much does a 4-year program cost at the beginning of that university. Okay, that's going to be step number 2. And in this case, we're going to use the inflation rate as my IY. Now, there might be an education inflation rate that is higher than the general inflation rate, so you need to be careful. In the example that we're going to look at, there's a 4% inflation rate. Okay, so once you've got your future value, $12,000 of education today, how much is it going to cost 12 years from now? That becomes your annual payment. And these payments are made at the beginning of each year. So that's the payment for the first year of university made at the beginning of the year. That's the payment here for the second year. That's the payment here for the third year. And that's the payment for the fourth year. So in step number 2, what you're going to do is you're going to calculate the present value of annuity due. You've got these 4 payments. the amount of that payment, PMT, equals the future value that you've calculated over here. So you're going to calculate the present value of the annuity due. Now, the important thing to note here is the discount rate, the IY. You're going to use the real inflation-adjusted rate of return. So that's going to be 1 plus the nominal rate divided by 1 plus the inflation rate minus 1 times 100. It uses the real inflation rate. And in the FP Canada video for protecting the family, this is where I had a real issue. They were not using this precise calculation for the real adjusted rate of return, and that's a little bit confusing. This is the way that we teach it at the college. This is why I wanted to make this video. If you've seen the previous video, that's fine. If you didn't, that's fine too, because this can be a standalone, okay? So this is a present value annuity due, step number 2, calculator in the beginning mode, and we're using the inflation adjusted rate of return. When I get that value there, that becomes my future value for step number 3. Step number 3, I'm just calculating the present value of that, and it's important to note that the discount rate here is just my investment rate. So I know that's how much money I need at the beginning of for 4 years of university. How much do I need right now to invest at my investment rate? So I'll have that target. We don't do anything inflation adjusted because we've already done the inflation adjustment here for how much the university is going to cost. Okay, so that's the 3 steps. Don't worry if that's a little bit too quick for you, because we're going to go through step 1, step 2, step 3. But I like to start with the big picture. These are the 3 steps that we're going to do. You'll see it now, and we'll review it again when we're done. But this is where we're heading. We're heading through these 3 steps. Okay, so this is time value money is the focus, education planning. This is the first of 4 slides. We're going to be looking at this little scenario you have. So let's assume your clients have 1 child who is currently 6 years old today and will be in college for 4 years, but that's not until the future, beginning at age 18. So we will further assume that a year of college expenses totals $12,000. That's in today's dollars. Inflation for college costs is 4%, and our clients can earn 7% on their investments net of any fees. We will apply the real adjusted rate to reflect how inflation offsets investment return. Okay, we do that in step number 2 actually, as when we use the inflation adjusted rate. Okay, so right for now we're focusing on step number 1, and that task is to inflate the $12,000. What education costs today times 0. Education costs $12,000, but the child is 6 years old today. They're going to go to school when they're 18 years old. So that's 12 years from now. Okay, so N is going to equal 12. Okay, present value equals 12,000. There's no payments along the way, and so payment would be 0, and we're going to compute for the future value. Okay, so again, you can do that using algebra. Future value is going to equal 12,000 times 1 plus I, that's where it's 4%, because we're going to use the inflation rate for education, and it's to the power of N, so that's 12 years from now, okay? So let's just bring up the calculator and do it. So there's people that really enjoy the algebra and not using the time value of money functionality, so let's keep those people happy. 1.04, that's 1 plus the inflation rate, y to the x, 12 years, n equals 12, and then we're going to multiply that by the present value of $12,000. So the future value of the education would be $19,212.39. So it costs $12,000 today. 12 years from now, when that child is starting education, the payment, so this is for 1 year, and they're going to go to college for 4 years, the payment that first year would be $19,212. So we did it using algebra. If I want to use the functionality of the calculator, I'm just going to check my PY equals 1. And so the N is 12, 12N. We said inflation rate of 4%, that's 4 IY. 12,000, we can make that a negative or a positive, but I'll make it a negative. That's money out of my pocket. Negative 12,000 present value. As I mentioned, there's 0 payment, so we're going to compute the future value. We get the same number, $19,212.38. Okay, I said I would show this in Excel. We'll just run through this very quickly. So again, let's assume your clients have one child who's currently 6 years old, be in college for 4 years, beginning at age 18. Further assume that a year of college expenses totals $12,000. That's today's dollars. Inflation for college costs is 4%, and our clients can earn 7% on their investments. So we're going to apply the real inflation adjusted rate to reflect how inflation offsets investment return. We're going to do that down here in step number 2. Okay, so here in Excel, I've put in my input cells, cost of annual education today in today's dollars, $12,000. Child is 6 years old today, start university at 18. And so here we can see that years of university, 18 minus 6 equals 12. The university program is going to be 4 years. Net return after fees, that's why I say net, is 7%. Education inflation is 4%. So in step number 2, when we do the real adjusted rate, you can see I've got the formula up here. 1 plus the investment return, 1 plus 7% divided by 1 plus the inflation, 1.04 minus 1 gives us 2.8846. This was my issue in the FP Canada case. They didn't use this equation for the real return. What they did is they simply did the net return minus the inflation. 7 minus 4 would be 3. You can see that's not exactly 3%. It's 2.88. Again, this is why I want to show you the importance of that. We use it down here in step number 2. We're going to use that real return. It's very important that we do that. We also do that in retirement planning for step number 2, and that's why we're running through these videos. Okay, but for now, the focus is on step number 1. We're going to inflate the $12,000 for 12 years at a 4% rate. The future value is $19,212. We solved that using algebra. We used the financial calculator. Now I said I would do it in Excel. So the mode is in the end mode. Number of years is 12. Periods per year is 1. N is therefore X number of years times periods per year. 12 times 1 equals 12. Inflation is 4%. Okay. Present value is 12,000. Payment is 0, so you compute for the future value 2112.39. Now I'm just going to delete that cell. I'm going to show you how you do the keystrokes for computing future value. Okay, I'll take off my. So we're just going to do equals future value. It brings up the functionality. Double click on it. So the first thing it wants is the rate, and this is why I want to show it to you. You take that rate, but in Excel you always have to divide by the periods per year. Okay, then after you do that, you hit a comma. You see it's clicking over here, highlighting the number of periods. That's why I choose my N. Then it's going to payment, which is here 0. I'm hitting comma again. It's asking for my present value. And now it's asking for my type, 0 at the end of the period, B at the beginning. So you can see here I've got 0 for the end of the period. And I click my bracket to finish it. Click enter. 19212.39. Okay, so that's step number 1 done with algebra, done in the financial calculator, and now done in this little Excel model, which will be available for download from my website. Okay, before we jump into that step number 2, just wanted to quickly go over inflation and serial payments. Again, this is when we were calculating what interest rate, discount rate to use in step number 2. We're going to have an investment return, and we're going to have a rate of inflation, and therefore we're going to use the real return. And this was my issue with the FP Canada case in their education planning for the retirement needs. They had a investment rate and they had a inflation rate, and they simply did the nominal rate minus the inflation rate and used 3%. But actually, the way that we teach it at the college in the more precise way is you're going to use the Fisher equation, and what that is the real return is not the inflation rate minus the nominal rate minus the inflation rate. It's a little bit more precise. We do 1 plus the nominal return divided by 1 plus the inflation minus 1 times 100. So in the example that we're looking at, nominal rate is 7%, inflation is 4%, so it's 1.07 divided by 1.04 minus 1 times 100. If we bring up the calculator again here, so that's 1.07 nominal rate divided by 1.04 inflation. Okay, then we're going to minus 1, and then we're going to multiply that by 100, and you can see that we have 2.88462%. So that is the IY that we're going to use in step number 2. We're going to use the inflation adjusted discount rate. So now we're moving on to step number 2. And in step number 2, we're going to calculate the amount needed at the beginning of retirement of university, i.e. not today, to fund the inflation-adjusted cash flow required for the client to maintain the purchasing power throughout the anticipated retirement or education period. So this step uses the real inflation-adjusted rate of return, which we just showed in the previous slide. So, okay, step number 1, we calculated that the present cost of education is $12,000. The child was 6 years old. They're going to go to school when they're 18, so that is 12 years from now. Inflation is at 4%, so that $12,000 when the child starts education is $19,212, round it down. That becomes your payment in step number 2. So step number 2, we're going to have, we're calculating the present value of an annuity due. The interest rate, we're using the real rate, so that's 1 plus 7% divided by 1 plus 4% minus 1, okay? And so n is going to equal 4, and the important thing is that the calculator's going to be in the beginning mode because we're making payments here at the beginning of the first year, at the beginning of the second year, at the beginning of the third year, and at the beginning of the fourth year. So that's, again, we're going to run through this in the next slide, but I'm just showing you step number 1, calculated the future value. What is education today? In the future, we use the inflation rate for the discount rate. Now we're going to calculate, that becomes our payment for 4 years, but we have to use inflation adjusted because we want to know the amount of the money here in total at the beginning of the 4 years. But in the first year, I'm going to pay out only part of that. I'm going to be earning interest 7% on my little investment account until I need to make the payment at the beginning of the second year, beginning of the third year, then at the beginning of the fourth year, it's all going to be gone. But we know that inflation, that education inflation is going to be rising over those 4 years. That doesn't go away. But I'm going to have a little pool of money because I'm calculating how much do I need right now in total for all the 4 years. So I pay out a little bit in the first year. I'm earning a little bit of interest. So we're not, for our discount rate to maintain that purchasing power, we're not doing 7 minus 4 equals 3. We're going to use the real adjusted rate of return, okay? Okay, so here we are, step number 2. We're going to calculate the future amount needed to fund 4 years of payments. Those payments are going to increase annually at the rate of education inflation, which was 4%, and the remaining funds continue to earn the 7% return. So if we drew that in a timeline as we did, we said that payments are going to begin here, $19,212 for the first year of education paid at the beginning of the year. So our calculator is going to be in the begin mode. And then there's going to be a payment at the beginning of the second year. It's not going to be that same amount. That's going to be inflating by 4%, okay? And a payment is going to be made at the beginning of the third year, and then a payment is going to be made at the beginning of the fourth year. Now we're calculating how much money do we need here at the beginning of the education to fund all 4 years. So when we do that, we're going to get an amount of $73,676. So this is what it's talking about, the remaining funds. We're going to calculate, I'm going to show you how to do that on the calculator in a minute here, but the present value of the 4 years of education is $73,676. At the beginning of the first year, we're going to take out the $19,212. We're going to have some balance remaining. So $73,676, if we minus $12,000 off that, at the beginning of the first year, we're going to see we're going to have a balance of $61,676, and that's going to be earning my investment rate of 7% until that second payment is taken out, which will be $19,212 inflated by 4%. And so that's why for the discount rate, we're using the inflation adjusted interest rate, 1 plus the investment rate divided by 1 plus the inflation rate minus 1 times 100. So again, just bring up the calculator very quickly. 1.07 divided by 1.04, and we're going to subtract 1 and then multiply it by 100. That is going to be our IY. Okay, so again, we need to have the calculator in the beginning mode, which we do. So it's going to be 4n, and then it's 2.8846. Oh, too many 8s there. 8846 is going to be my IY. We're calculating the present value of the annuity due. The payment is our $19,212. Make that a negative. That's a payment for the first year of education. There's no future value because the education is finished. So we're going to compute the present value annuity due, calculator in the beginning mode. It's $73,676 and 7 cents. Okay, so that's step number 2. We're calculating the present value of the annuity due here, which we recall your child is 6 years old now. They're going to go to school when they're 18. So this present value of the annuity due is 12 years from now. Okay. So here I'm in Excel for step number 2. The important thing is recall is that we're in the beginning mode. The number of years, it's 4 years of education, so it's 4n. Periods per year is 1. So therefore n, xpy, number of years times periods per year, 4 times 1 is 4. Our IY here, again, we're using the inflation adjusted real rate, so it's 2.8846. Where's that coming from? It's coming from here, 1 plus 7% divided by 1 plus 4% minus 1 times 100. Okay, very clear. And then our payment is $19,212, and we calculate the present value. Again, if I just want to delete that, just show you how I do that, I'm going to equals present value. There's nothing special for annuity due. So then the rate, I just want to show you again, the rate always is the rate, but you have to divide it by, in Excel, the periods per year. Then I hit comma. Now it's telling me the number of periods. Hit comma, it's telling me to click on payment. Hit comma, it's telling me to click on future value. When I say it's telling me, it's because it bolds there. So future value, then the type, this is important. I'm in beginning mode. You can see, again, if I click on the type, beginning mode is number 1. It gives you a little prompt. Hit enter, and I've got 73,677.54. So that's step number 2 done in Excel. So we're moving on now to the third step. You can see step 3 here. The third step, you can either solve for a lump sum amount, or you could do it different iterations, annual payments needed today, at the end of the year, or monthly payments. Anyhow, at the end of the day, what you want to know is how much do I need right now, or through some monthly or yearly saving to save up for this amount at the beginning of retirement or beginning of education. So you can see in step number 2, we calculated that here, which was 12 years from now, we would need $73,676 to be able to fund 4 years of education, having the amount up front at the beginning. Okay, so now what we're simply doing is we're going to calculate, that becomes our future value, and we want to know what is that amount today, either as a lump sum or how much would I need to save over the next 12 years so that I'm going to accumulate that as my goal, my target. Now this step, we're going to use the investment rate because we have our savings. We're going to invest them, and we're going to earn the investment rate of 7% net of fees. N is going to equal 12 years because it's times 0 until the 18 years at the beginning of the education is needed. So N is going to equal 12. Future value 73,676. We're going to simply calculate the present value using IY equals 7, compute the present value. That's step 3. So here we are in step number 3, where we're going to discount the amount from step number 2, 12 years back to today, to determine the lump sum needed to fund the future income stream, the 4 years of education. So just going to bring up the calculator. Aha, I'm still in the beginning mode, but for this I'm going to use calculator in the end mode. So I'm going to do second, begin, second, enter, get it out of that beginning mode. And so it's 12 is my N. My interest rate is 7%. That's what I said, my investment rate. I'm not making any payments. The future value is that 73,678. That's my rounding, how much money I would need to fund 4 years of education, beginning with a payment at the beginning of the first year. And I'm going to compute the present value, and I've got $32,000 and rounding here, $713.91. So you can see $32,714 would be how much I need today. I'm going to invest it for the next 12 years, earning 7%. At that time, I'm going to have $73,678 at the beginning of the first year of 4 years of education. I'm going to make that first payment, which recall was, just going to go, yes, that first payment was $19,212. So that would come out of the $73,000. I'd have some funds remaining. Those would be invested. Again, still earning that 7%. Education costs are going up by 4% every year. So by the end of the 4 years, that's going to be ground down to zero. And that's why I use that inflation adjusted rate in step number 2. And so that's it. That is the how we calculate the present value. You can see this is saying slide 3 out of 4. This is the end of the day when we're doing our insurance planning, because we say, that's absolutely how much money we would need today in case one of the parents died, wouldn't be able to continue earning money and savings. So we'd want that education fund set up today immediately. We'd need $32,714. Working on the assumption that the child will go to school 12 years from now, that I can earn 7% on my investments, that education costs $12,000 today. This student would go to university for 4 years, but that wouldn't be until they're 18, which is 12 years from now. Okay, so that's so the next thing though, the next slide. So that's what we do for the insurance planning. But the fourth slide is just going to say, oh, what if the scenario is different and we want to set up a savings fund? So that in 12 years' time, we have that same amount, that future value of $73,678. Okay, now it becomes a family financial planning, savings, making some earnings. I'm saving it, and I'm investing for education is one of my goals. How do we do that now on a monthly savings plan? So that's important. We do the present value, because if I was doing insurance needs planning, I need that $32,000. But now we could spin the question and say, okay, let's look at a family savings. How much do I need to save yearly or monthly? So I'm just going to show here step number 3 in Excel. So you can see here step number 3, we're in the end mode. The number of years is 12 years. We're using this nominal rate, 7%. The future value is the $73,670, rounded 678. So we calculate the present value, okay? Won't go. And then I said what we're moving on to then. So that's what we need for our insurance planning. I would need $32,713 today. That's why we calculated the present value. But as I mentioned, we could change this question a little bit and make it into a monthly payment. So here we can see that we change the number of years to 12, but we change the PY, periods per year, to 12. So our N is 12 times 12, which is 144. We're using that 7% nominal rate. And you can see here we're at the end. So we're saying, okay, how much would we need to pay into a savings account at the end of every month, starting this month and every month for the next 144 months, so I can get that future value of 677. Okay, so that's the Excel there. Step number 3 in terms of a lump sum, or step number 3 in terms of a monthly savings. Okay. If we wanted to change this to an annual savings, I just changed the periods per year to 1, and we could see that annually we would have to save $3,849.27. But if it was on a monthly basis, change the PY to 12, I would have to save $326 a month to be able towards the education fund, so that at the end of 144 months we would have the $73,678 available. Okay, this is the last slide for this video. We're doing step number 3. The last calculation that we did, we calculated the present value as a lump sum. That would be for insurance purposes planning. But now we're taking that step number 3, we're changing it, saying, oh, what would be the monthly savings we would need at the end of each month? So we're just going to bring up the calculator here. And you can see that the first thing we're going to do is check the periods per year. Well, I've got it set as annual because that was from the last calculation that we did. I'm going to hit 12 and then hit enter. So my periods per year is now monthly, 12 months per year. So my N is going to be 12 years of savings. Second N is 144, or I could do 144N. The interest rate is 7%. That's our investment rate. There's no present value. And the future value is the 73,678. We did some rounding, so that's going to give us a slightly different number than we saw in Excel if you've got a keen eye, because in Excel it's not doing any rounding. But here we put that as our future value. That's how much we need at the beginning of the 4 years of education in order to be able to fund all 4 years of that education. I'm going to hit compute my payment. The family would need to save $370.90 at the end of this month and every month for the next 144 months. And at that time, if they're earning 7% compounded annually, they would have $73,678. We know that the first year university payment would come out of that. For the next 4 years, the payments made at the beginning of 4 years, they'd be earning some interest on the money in that account at 7%, but the cost of education would also be going up by 4%. At the end of the 4 years, there'd be no money left. So that's why in step number 2, we use that real adjusted exchange rate. Okay, so that's it for this video. Hopefully that helps you understand the 3 steps for education planning for not only insurance needs purposes, but also as a monthly savings target. Thank you very much. Actually, I'll make this the last slide, just a quick summary of what we did. The 3 steps for the retirement or education planning are basically the same. Step number 1, we know that education costs $12,000 today. Child is 6 years old. They're going to go to university when they're 18. So the first step, we want to know that $12,000 today is going to be $19,212 12 years from now. That's the annual cost of education, but they're going to go to school for 4 years. So that payment is going to be made at the beginning of the first year. Beginning of the second year, it's not going to be that same amount. That's going to be inflating by 4%, but there's going to be a payment there. So in step number 2, we calculated the present value of the annuity due, gave us $73,676. If we have that amount at the beginning of year 1, we're going to be able to make this first payment, second payment, third payment, and fourth payment. At the end of that, we'll have no money left. So you can see that the first payment is going to be $19,212. We're going to have some balance. On that balance, I'm going to be earning 7%, but the inflation is also going to be increasing by 4% over that time period. So that's why in step number 2, we use the inflation adjusted discount rate. Step number 1, we use the inflation rate for a discount rate. Step number 2, we use the inflation rate. Once we have that amount for step number 2, that becomes our future value for step number 3. So for insurance planning, we said we would need $32,704 today. That's going to earn 7% for 12 years, at which time I'll have $73,676. So I'm going to be able to make my first education payment for my child, $19,212. I'm going to be able to make payments 2, 3, and 4. At that time, I'm going to have nothing left. So if I have $32,704 today, using all those assumptions, I'm going to be good. I have funded my child's education should anything happen to me. Now, if I'm planning, we're just going to do a monthly savings between myself and my spouse. We're just starting an education fund. How much would we need to save on a monthly basis? It would be $328. Okay, so that's the 3 steps for education planning. Very similar to what we did in the FP Canada case, but there was a little bit of messiness with regards to the discount rate. So I thought I'd run through a version here that was a little bit cleaner. We've done the calculations in Excel. We've done them on the calculator. I think we should be all good. Thank you. Thank you very much.